Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to a new episode of the Campus Dialogues, a Muslim Views production in affiliation with MuslimFin. MuslimFin, your roadmap to Islamic banking and finance. I'm your host, Ali Sali, and here this evening to introduce our guest is my good friend and colleague, Siraj Music. Siraj?
Assalamu alaikum, Ali. How you doing?
Alhamdulillah, good to be back.
Listen, like I always say, another week, another podcast.
Absolutely.
And tonight we have a special guest on our show. Our guest is Ihsan Samaudin, and he's the head of financial planning for Al Himaya. Ihsan, welcome to the podcast.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Well, firstly, shukran for having me here. It's definitely good to finally join you guys after a long time.
Ihsan, we've been speaking for quite some time, so we're
Yeah.
quite excited to have you on the show. And there's quite a few questions that we want to ask you and dive into. But before we start, perhaps give us an overview of your journey into financial planning, as well as the Sharia aspects of it. Were you always passionate about it? Was it a career choice from young? How did you end up where you are today?
Because this is a very interesting question for me. And like I told you guys before, that I don't really do this. I'm sitting on the other side. But alhamdulillah, so I'm not used to this. But anyway, if we go back to when I was younger, growing up, it was never a thought in my mind that I'm going to end up in Islamic finance. It was like, I'm going to go and study to become a financial manager.
Yeah.
Because I come from humble beginnings. Parents started their own business. I worked in the business as a youngster coming up in my teenage years. Later on in primary school towards high school. And then still, once I finished high school, still didn't think of Islamic finance. That it wasn't a thought. It's just, my family's going through this difficult time. My father's doing all of these things. You think to yourself, I don't want to go through this kind of a struggle. So what can I do? And then at that time, you see the classifieds. So the Sunday Times was always something my dad got. And then in that newspaper was the classifieds. And then I happened to come across the job section.
Yeah.
And then it says financial manager, and it's like 750,000 rand a year. It's like, wow, this is something I want to do. And then it was on the path of, when I get to high school, I'm going to study accounting, and that's the path I want to become a CA, etc. Because I had an auntie that also studied accounting, and then I job shadowed her once, and I was like, okay, maybe this is for me,
Yeah.
And again, I think at that time Islamic finance wasn't a topic. It wasn't discussed anywhere, so it wasn't even a thought.
Yeah.
And when I finished matric, it was a matter of, do I study Islamic studies or do I go and do university?
Yeah.
Because my whole life, it was always, I always wanted to be hafiz.
Mm,
And
mm,
it was something I yearned for, but never actually got to go.
Okay.
And it's all in the, Allah, you plan what Allah
Yeah,
has His
100%.
plan for you. And I think it wasn't put out for me that way, but it's still something I'm still constantly.
Listen, it's
going
never
after
too
it,
late, eh? I mean, it's still something you can do today.
Yeah.
So,
Alhamdulillah, and I'm making effort towards that slowly,
Actually.
during the busy schedules and so on.
Yeah.
But so I go to university,
yeah.
2011. I'm 17 years old, turning 18, and I was playful, and I failed my first year. But it's important because now I'm coming out of that, and it's like, okay, I should have studied Islamic studies first, because
Yeah.
and I think I had to go through that failure to discover, look, I don't know who I am. I don't know what I want to be. I don't know where I want to be.
Mm,
I
mm.
don't know what's the next steps in my life. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to go and study Islamic studies.
Okay.
It wasn't sort of a gap year. I took 4 years.
Okay.
I'm going to go and find Allah.
Allah.
Who is
Yeah.
Allah?
Mm.
And what is my relationship with Him? And when you study Islamic studies, you learn from your teachers that whatever you went to go study for is what you're going to come out with. And it was in my final year. I was writing exam, and I think it was, I can't remember which. I think it was inheritance we were writing, and then Sheikh Khalid Abdul Rauf, he was invigilating that day, and then he asked me, you know, this is final year, what you're going to do next year? Are you going to use your studies to benefit the community?
Mm,
I was
mm.
like, wow, like nobody ever asked me
Never
that. when
thought
I
of
was
that,
like-
yeah.
And that's what sparked me to think about how am I going to use my studies, my Islamic studies, in my work or whatever. How am I going to do that? Because whenever you go study Islamic studies, it's like, I'm going to become a sheikh. But
Yeah.
I didn't want to do that. And then when I went to university, did finance, and then I was away from from IPSA. I studied at IPSA 4 years. This is 2012 until 2015. So
Okay.
2016 went back to university. Couldn't get into the accounting degree because you failed, and so now you can't do anything. you can't do anything with their decision. So you take what you get. Got in the BCom general stream, and I majored in finance and investments.
Okay.
I was like, this is actually more interesting for me because it was about the numbers, telling a story,
Yeah.
etc. So I found that more interesting. And then graduated 2019. The next year was COVID.
Sure.
Like you can imagine that this picture that graduate looking for work and people are being fired
Yeah.
during COVID.
Business
So
are
it's like it was
closing.
hard. So
Yeah.
and to make matters worse, I was married and I had 2 children already.
Sure.
So now it was like it's tough. Like what am I gonna do? And then a year and a half. I'm really cutting the story short. A year and a half later passes. I find a job at the company where I was doing estates, walls and estates planning, and with that was I got introduced to Takafu,
Okay.
and that's where it sparked me, and it came back, and I was like, wow, this is very interesting. I didn't even know this existed. For all the years we were told insurance is haram, 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 and now I'm being exposed to Sharia boards, members on the Sharia board, muftis, and we're having discussions with them. People, I'm going out in the community, I'm seeing 5-6 people a day, every day, sometimes on a Saturday also going out seeing maybe 1 or 2 people. And I was there for about just under 3 years, and in that time my phone went from probably like 200 people to 2,000 people. So being exposed in the community and seeing that difficulty, and that just was like, I need to specialize here.
Yeah.
And that's what got me into Islamic finance. And in that time I met people like Muhammad Vadi and Sheikh Ziad Isaacs, and was part of a conference because Sheikh Ziad Isaacs allowed me to come, he's sort of my mentor in that case, so I got to go, and I was exposed to then a whole different world, because now you're seeing international people coming on stage to talk about Islamic finance, the different parts of Islamic finance, and that just got me excited, and I was like, this is my space. So I wasn't passionate before, so it's that thing where passion is not something you just decide, it's after doing, and then you discover the passion. So that's how I got to it. Yeah.
Alhamdulillah, that's an amazing story, and we really appreciate you sharing that with us. What I find very interesting about what you said was there were certain times in your life where you felt like there were some failures. However, that failures seemed almost as if they were stepping stones to steer you into the right direction. And what I find also amazing about about your story is that you almost guided in a sense. So you guided in the sense that you initially went from studying or studies, studying to be an accountant, to be a CA, and then going to your Islamic studies, and then from there really being guided to your calling. To something that you exceptionally or extremely passionate about. And I find like that in itself is a miracle, because there are so many people who go through life and never really find their calling, and never really find that topic or that job or that that work.
That gives him that drive.
The thing that gives them that drive, that makes them wake up in the morning and really say, okay, what am I going to do today? I'm excited to get out there and inform the community. But what I really want to ask you about, Ihsan, shukran for sharing the story, is you mentioned that you used to see 6 people a day, all right? And your phone went from 200 people to 2,000 people within a period of 3 years. That in itself is quite something, right?
It's just numbers.
So, but obviously within that time, you've also collected quite a bit of data, and not only data in terms of Excel spreadsheets, but also mental notes of some of the challenges that you see in the community and some of the things that our community faces. So maybe you can share some of that with us.
So it's a very good takeaway from the story I told, and just it's taking me back now. So I'm taking a minute to pause, because I think the most interesting part out of this journey, working there at the Walls and Estates company, is you see people that is really lowest of the low in terms of financial, the finances,
Yeah.
to people who's like out of this world, rich, wealthy, that it's mind blowing to see what they have, and then this middle class and so on. And it was very interesting to see what makes people tick, and how, and the similarities in, even though that person is low income and that other person is really wealthy, their understanding of Islam was pretty much the same. I came in there to do a job. I came in there to the first thing is nobody understands, and I was dealing with Islamic inheritance, and I must talk about takaful, which in layman's terms they translate, and I don't like calling it this because it's not that. They translate it as Islamic insurance, but I don't like to call it insurance because it's not the same. When people think insurance, they think the conventional. Whereas takaful is a social, it's a social fund. It's a mutual fund. People come together to assist one another, and the proof of that is in the Quran. Don't ask me to quote the Quranic verse now. I'm not happy, but there's evidence in that. I think it's in Surah Ma'idah, verse 2, to assist one another in goodness. Right. So most people don't know that these things actually exist. Takaful.
Yeah.
That it's a way for me to mitigate or do away with my risk.
Okay.
Because now when I pass away, there's X, Y, and Z that's going to happen. I must pay for executors' fees. I must pay for transferring of my property. I must pay for X,
Yeah.
And people, they weren't aware that Islam had laws for inheritance. Like, how crazy is that? It's one of the laws in the Sharia that is very specific. Very specific. This person gets X amount, that person gets X amount, that person very specific laws. And if Allah is that specific in the Quran with His law, there is no two ways about it. In fact, all the different schools of thought have no difference of opinion on that, because Allah is that clear.
Yeah.
But people weren't aware of this. And so before, usually, if you think about like Western, the insurance industry, they sign you up for a insurance policy, and it's like once, it's one meeting done, maybe 2 meetings. With in the Muslim community, it was first a process of education.
Correct.
This is what the will is.
Yeah.
Yes, a will is for you and your spouse, because some people are thinking the will's only for the husband, but it's for both.
100%.
But so they didn't. We had to talk about the takaful and how that is used to help your family after you pass away. And that was just in that period of time. And I think that data was very important, and that is what sparked me. Like, we have to do something about this.
Yeah.
We have to do something about it.
Iksan, I think you mentioned quite a few important points, but I just want to take one step back.
Yeah.
You're the head of financial planning at Al-Himaya. And when I think about financial planning, I think about financial advice, financial advisors. I think about the 17 phone calls I get every day from people trying to sell me a policy, insurance. Listen, tell me, is that the practice in the industry? Has it changed? How do you guys go about actually getting out to the communities, getting out to clients? Because it's twofold. People thinking, there's a stigma around financial advice. People think you try to sell me a product. You're trying to educate people on products that you should have, solutions you should have, like an Islamic world.
Yeah.
How to go about investing from a sharia-compliant, and we'll get into the products a bit later. But how do you guys go about it? Is that the practice? Listen, these guys are blocking everybody that calls me. So, I mean, what's happening in the industry?
I would say, let's be honest about it. You still get that.
Yeah.
You still get people that's just trying to sell you something. And I think that gives a negative connotation to sales. And the more I study sales, the more you see that true sales is about solving a problem. And that's what I'm here to do.
Yeah.
I am driven by the purpose of shifting Muslims away from riba with the different options that's available. But this goes through a process of sales, not the way the way some of the financial advisors or some of the companies in the industry, they misuse that concept of sales, and they just calling people every day. They don't care whether you tell them, don't call me now, call me later, and then they spam call you. So the practice is not to do that. And I think with the introduction of WhatsApp and applications where people can take surveys and stuff, it makes it a softer approach. And we don't come in. I think sometimes back in the day, one of the older advisors were telling me the difference between him And the guys that he was coming up with is a lot of advisors would come with quotes.
Yeah.
And they sell you a quote. It's like you're coming with an item, a car, and they're just selling you the
Yeah.
car because they want to make a commission. Whereas what you would do is we first sit, we have a conversation. I get to know who you are and what your needs are. You get to know who I am as the advisor, and you get to see my intentions. And I enjoy that part of the process because the intention is to build a long-lasting relationship with a person, to look after them, and to show up for their family in their time of need. And I think this ties in very much with the philosophy of Islam, the community aspect. We must look after each other. I'm an expert or training to become an expert in my field, and you training to be an expert in your field, whether you're a doctor or a surgeon or a lawyer or an accountant. I can't tell you about your job.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I'm coming, and if you're an accountant, you're also selling a service.
Correct.
If you're a speaker on the stage, you're selling a service. You're selling your knowledge to come on the stage to share it with everybody else. Everybody's getting paid for something, but it's that thought of people tying the financial advisor with that spam calls that you get and thinking that, it's the same thing. It's not the same thing. A proper financial advisor is going to get to know you first, find out what's your needs, and base the product and the service on what you actually need. Not just, here's a quote, take this one over that one because that one is cheaper. That's not how it works.
No, and absolutely, because I agree with that 100%, and that is what financial planning is. Financial planning really is a service, the service of matching up the client's need with that specific product in order to solve for that need, and through that is a sales process, right? And absolutely perfectly said, and I think that is why, and that's the message we want to get out to our audience, to say to them that, when you do sit down with the financial planner that cares about your family, that cares about you, that's going to walk the journey with you, that's going to be on that, that's going to build that relationship with you and your family down the road, who's really interested in making sure that they do right by you and your family. That's the type of person that you need to look out for. And once you find someone like that, you still have to trust but verify, right?
Yeah.
And so the way of doing that is, requesting a written proposal. So like you mentioned in the past, people came with quotes, but nowadays a quote is, you have to be transparent. A quote is not enough.
Yeah.
You need a proposal with the quote, and you need to understand, you need transparency. You need to be able to see what the fees are, what the product is, what the product entails, how long, are you going to be invested? Are there any restrictions? Does it actually meet your need, your goal and what you discussed? And
I think added to that, if I could add it to that, is tell the person, go do your own research, speak to another sheikh or speak to another qualified person. Don't fear that person is now suddenly going to go, that you can speak to someone else and now you're going to get the business. Allah is the one to put out
100%.
who's going to do business with you. I mean, the fact that I'm telling you to go to someone else is, I'm confident in what I can offer you. And how I can help you.
Iksan, we spoke about financial planning. But what is Islamic financial planning? I mean, is it different? Why does it exist and why is it important?
Yeah.
So what's the difference between your normal conventional, let's call it conventional financial planning, and now Islamic financial planning? I mean, talk to me about that.
So, if you look at the conventional way of doing financial planning, it's sort of vanilla. Everybody can do that financial plan. What's your needs? And there's no regard really for following certain principles. With like now they got ESG and ethical investing and so on. But the real difference is that the financial planning process is the same. But where the difference comes is that the Islamic financial plan must adhere to Sharia principles.
Okay.
That's the main difference. It is not any more complicated than that.
Yeah.
Where it may be complicated is you not understanding what the Sharia principles are. Then it's a matter of educating yourself.
So you're saying that there are Sharia-compliant products that you can now offer clients.
Yeah.
So I want to bring it more home. Like, let's say
make it real for the people.
I'm 2 years married, right? I'm 2 years married. I got a job. My wife is pregnant with our first child. I'm speaking to a financial advisor. What are the things I should be speaking about? What are the things I should be looking at, considering as someone that's starting out in my career? I'm newly married. I've got a baby on the way. What are the things I should consider?
First thing is, especially from a husband's perspective, we are, Islamically, we are the providers.
Yeah.
We're not taking anything away from the females who's working. They're doing an amazing job. I mean, if you think of the Prophet's first wife also, businesswoman. So we take nothing away from them. But this is the role that Allah has given us. And so your thinking goes along like, how do I ensure that should anything happen to me, as I pass away, because you see there's a child there.
Yeah.
You have to think about education. You have to think about if I die and my children are still young, how do they continue living?
Okay.
Where do they get the income from? Especially if you're the only one working and your wife isn't working because she's at home looking after the children by choice. Let's put it make that the context. By choice, she chooses to stay at home to look after the kids. You should be thinking about the implications if you don't have a will. That's number one. My financial planning process is start with the end in mind.
Okay.
Why? Because you're going to pass away. Guaranteed.
Yeah, that's the
Everybody's going to pass away.
Everybody will pass away.
And it's free. You can go to the MJC. You can go to any other ulama body. You can go to financial institutions, banks, etc. Everybody does wills. You can even go to CNA.
Yeah.
I go get a will.
Now, when you say, Ihsan, doing a will, putting a will together, for those, who don't understand the importance of a will, what happens if you, pass away without a will?
In South Africa, if you don't have a will, this is why it's important to consult someone with the knowledge of Islamic law of inheritance and the law of the country as well. If you pass away without a Sharia will, Islamic will, then your estate's going to be administered according to the government's law, which is not Sharia compliant. And so, you can go get one by CNA, but it's not going to be compliant with the laws of the Sharia. And that's the difference, tying back to the financial planning process. Don't get the will in order, and you don't sit with someone who actually understands your scenario, because you have a wife, you have a child, newly married, based on the context that you gave me. You need to ensure that is you covered there from a will perspective. And then after that is what finances am I making available should anything happen to me, whether it's family takaful or you got some kind of investments that's going for your child's education, insurances for your house. We're talking about insurance in terms of takaful for your house and your car, etc. Because anything can happen. Life is very unpredictable. So that unpredictability is what you want to prepare for. So the insurance and the takaful is always there for that. But also having savings. Because now if you lose a job, then where do you draw from? That's when it becomes very difficult. And so that's where we as financial advisors, we come in and we look at your scenario and we give you these things to think about. Because most people don't think about this stuff.
I find that very interesting because, it seems like, because obviously we live in South Africa, right? So now there is Roman Dutch law, right? And then obviously Sharia, right? The Sharia law. And now with that will, we need to, from in some way, kind of match up the two that will then create the best outcome for your client, right? And so when we're putting things like takaful in place, we realize that we don't live in a Muslim country, right? And we don't live in a Islamic society. So, for example, if I had a brother and I were to pass away, for example, my brother, or if my father was still alive, from an inheritance perspective, I'm just using an example, would then have to maybe take care of my family, right? And obviously now we don't necessarily have that in South Africa or from the South African context. So now we have these other things like takaful in place, and really that, and maybe you can just elaborate a bit on this, but takaful and these types of insurance is really there to protect the family in the event of death, so that they could kind of continue to live a similar lifestyle.
So to bring that home, make it real, there's a house involved, and there's some assets and so on, and the person passes away. And I'm using a really extreme example. Father passes away, and he needs to know, and there's a bond. And this is the reality of South Africa currently. Whether you have a sharia-compliant bond or sharia-compliant home finance or interest-based bond, cuts no ice. The reality is, it is what it is. So how do you cover and make sure that your family has a roof over their head after you pass away? This is really the essence of takaful. It's the community coming together, putting money into a pool, and everybody understanding that this pool of money is going to be used to cover against a risk. So a family takaful, specifically family takaful because it's the bigger one, it's used to pay out for debts and taxes and legal expenses for winding up the estate, etc. Because where's that money going to come from? Nobody really has investments unless you're really wealthy. But the general population of Muslims don't really, even beyond Muslims, don't have 350,000 or a million rand in the bank to just have there just in case. Most people's living hand to mouth. And so how do you take care of them? Is you can have then a monthly payment where you're paying towards this takaful that when in the event something happens to you, then your family can draw from the takaful fund to cover those debts. And that safeguards them against losing the house, having to sell the car, or not having an income, because you can even structure it in a way where it can cover them for a year or two worth of income.
Ihsan, I think you mentioned quite valuable points there.
Yeah.
From a financial planning perspective, when I think about it, or when I've sat with a financial advisor, some of the products that we've discussed was investing either for short-term, mid-term, long-term. So say, for example, I want to purchase a car or I want to go for Hajj. We talk about investments. We talk about if anything should happen to me in terms of death, in terms of disability, in terms of severe illness, and my job is impacted as an example. We speak about funeral cover or funeral policies. We talk about retirement annuities, saving for your retirement, etc. Are you saying we've got all these products now available from a Sharia perspective?
I would say majority of it we are covering currently because I'm involved in the industry, so I'm constantly, I'm very passionate about this. I'm constantly looking for companies to build more Sharia-compliant products for our people, because it can't be that we're 30 years out of apartheid and we still have nothing. No, okay, not that we don't have anything. There's a lot of development that happened. But yes, we have now Sharia-compliant funeral cover. And this is what I like about where I'm currently working. And then this Al-Himaya and Al-Himaya means protection, and that's really our commitment to the community. It's, I think, one of the only Sharia financial planning businesses in the Western Cape, dare I say even South Africa, because I haven't heard of anything else. And I'm one of the advisors there, Islamic financial advisors, who get to work within this business where we have taken all those products that you just mentioned now, whether it's funeral, short-term, car, home, whether it's family takaful or Sharia-compliant investments for before you retire, after you retire, even if it's just for Hajj, you're saving for Hajj. We have all of that under one roof.
Oh, it's amazing.
Right. So, and the interesting thing is, you don't have one company that has all the solutions for you. Like, for example, without mentioning names, let's say there's this big financial institution. They got investments for you. This is not non-Sharia compliant stuff. They got investments, they got funeral, they got life cover, they got all the covers, all the investments under one roof. Not the financial planning business, the product provider. They have everything under that one roof. We don't have that for Islamic finance yet. And that's my hope, that we get a company like that, where you can have all of the products under one roof. It's going to be a difficult one to do, given the players
the
in the industry.
is because our Muslims aren't taking up these products, number one, and why is that? Or do we also take into consideration the dynamics of the country? Like, I think we are the minority. Like, I think we probably around 10%. I don't think the stats
2%, I think. We're 2%.
2%.
Like, I actually checked it earlier today.
We don't know how correct that is. I mean, that's been 2% for a while now, so it could be more. But the take-up, do we look at, we are a minority, is it really going to grow? And my follow-up question actually to what you were saying was, as an individual, say I do come across Islamic financial planning later on in my life, and I have existing conventional products. Let's say I've got life cover, but conventional short-term insurance, conventional investments, etc. Can I switch that to Sharia compliant now, after a few years of actually being involved in conventional? Is that option available for our people out there?
So you asked me now two questions. Why are people not taking it up? And are they, can you switch out whatever you currently have that's on a conventional side? Right? So So first question is the reason why people are not taking it up is because there's a lack of knowledge. Simply put, and it's these kind of podcasts, MuslimFin, I highly encourage people watch this, and there's other platforms out there as well, like Beyond Riba, my podcast, Benefit Continuum. The intention is to educate. Well, before educate, I would say make a way, because like our brother, I think CEO of Islamic Bank, Aman
Mohammed.
Yeah, man. You said it at the conference of I Consult, the International Islamic Conference in 2022, that we first start with awareness, and when you get awareness, people now ask the question, okay, I now know that thing exists. How do I know more? How do I get to know more? This is when education starts. So this kind of podcast is what drives the awareness, and then from there, people start asking questions, and now the education starts. Once they start finding out, I didn't know this. I didn't know that. Earlier today, I spoke to a lady who was she's now in her 40s, and she's been working in the finance industry for so long as an analyst and, in the background. And then she discovered Islamic finance. Something just sparked the interest, and then she went down the rabbit hole. And that's what we want, to give people that awareness, go down the rabbit hole, and then come find out how we can then solve your problem, which then leads to question number 2. Because now you understand, okay, these products are available. I've spoke to different scholars. I spoke to people that's knowledgeable on Islamic finance, because not everybody knows about Islamic finance. It's just get that also out of the way. It's a specialist thing. Just like lawyers, doctors. Islamic finance is a specialist study of the Sharia. So speak to the right people.
Correct, 100%.
So question 2, can I switch out? Yes, you can. It's a matter of contacting your financial advisor and telling him, this is what I want, because you're the client. It's about looking after you and what you need. And sometimes you're giving up, some of the premiums, because people always look at their policy like, I'm giving up my premiums. I put in so much, now I'm not getting anything out of it. You do it for the sake of Allah.
On the
get
premium.
barakah out of it.
Correct. So people do consider that, and unfortunately, we are living in an economy where people are quite price sensitive. So we talk about the premiums, but from a product perspective, are we also getting a like for like in terms of benefits from the Sharia perspective as well?
I think so.
Yeah.
If you actually look at the terms and conditions for both products and compare, you get the same. Sometimes the premiums will be more, yes. And I think it's because the companies are still in its infancy stage, so they're busy building. You get the other conventional companies that are they're around for over 100 years. Obviously, they can offer cheaper, and they're going to come in cheaper because they're going to undercut you. And I don't know if that's the intention, but it looks that way, Whereas on the Islamic finance side, it's not always the case where it's more expensive. I've experienced with my own clients where I was able to discuss with the financial institution to get the takaful premium lowered, and then also, and it's like for like, when something happens to you, the claim must be paid out.
Ihsan, what do you say to some of the people within our viewership or audience that talks about insurance, conventional insurance, but then say, okay, I'm going to stick with the conventional insurance because when I had my estate set up, I follow that principle of non-enrichment, or not enriching myself. If we were to use that concept versus going with the takaful product, how I know this may be a bit of a controversial question.
No, it's a good question.
But how do you?
I always make a joke. Another uncle also makes the same joke. He's like, "Do you want to go to heaven?" It sounds harsh, like, "Oh, if I'm not going to follow it, I'm going to go to Jahannam." We're not saying that. It's for Allah to decide where we end up at the end of the day. I can't deem anyone to Jahannam. However, I have a very big concern for my brother and my sister in Islam. I want for you what I want for myself, and I advise from that point of view. I want for you what I want for myself, and Mufti Meng says, want better for your brother than what you want for yourself. 100%. And because there's angels making dua for you, so you hope you're going to get better also. So it's a challenge for a lot of advisors, and I'd say maybe it's a bigger challenge for the Muslim advisors, because now there's this expectation from them, and that they need to now up their game in terms of knowledge of Islamic finance, and could be looked at in a certain way, like, you're not that Muslim if you're not advising on the Sharia-compliant side, and they may be faced with that dilemma. the moral dilemma, you know. And maybe they also don't trust or believe in the Islamic finance way yet. And inshallah, through this, you know, it inspires them towards this way. Because there's a lot of barakah in this. I promise you, do it the right way, do it for the sake of Allah. Lots of barakah in this. You will find, maybe I'm paying a higher premium, but Allah increases your wealth. You know, people don't think of it that way. Allah's the one in charge. You do for Him and He will come and assist you. So how do you approach people who saying, this is really what you're asking, how do you approach people who saying, you know what, I'm going to keep what I have. You know, it's more cost effective for me. I've set up my stuff already in such a way that, you know, I'm not looking to enrich myself, it's just to cover my debts, my taxes. There, the problem is the thinking that enriching yourself is a problem. Islamically, being rich is not a problem. I've had multiple conversations with different ulama, and there's no problem with enriching yourself. Because then if we're saying there's a problem with enriching yourself, then Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu was very wealthy. Sayyidina Uthman was very wealthy. You're saying we have a problem with him being wealthy. That's how you use the wealth.
Correct.
There's no problem. So if you have a takaful in place, a family takaful, you're more than welcome to take out 10 million, 15 million to pay out to your family. Why? Because it's halal money. How do you know it's halal? Because where it's coming from, the money comes from a halal source. I mean, that's a very technical discussion. It might take another whole podcast. But you can trust that it's coming from a sharia-compliant source, which is the takaful fund, which is managed, which has oversight by a sharia board, you know. And it's really having that kind of an open discussion. But in order for the advisor to have that kind of a discussion, and specifically talking to the advisors, because, you know, I can't be the only financial advisor, Islamic financial advisor doing this. We need more out there because the community is huge. I'm not gonna be a Superman and get to everybody, you know.
Do we have enough experts in the field?
I don't think we have enough financial advisors.
And we spoke
Specifically financial advisors.
Financial
knowledgeable
on
in
the
this.
Islamic side. And then also you spoke about awareness and then the education part. Are we doing enough as a community or as an industry to actually create that awareness and educate our community on?
No, not yet. I don't think we're here yet. I think there's more ads about the other big companies and what they are offering. And we know we're doing this in our small effort to get the message out there. But I think more can be done.
I think also from an acceleration point of view, we're also starting to see these companies, they see the value in the Islamic financial industry. So you're seeing these Islamic windows pop up. So you have these conventional institutions with an Islamic window. That division looks after the sharia-compliant products. So we're seeing a lot of that. But I think we have come a long way in terms of where we are today.
Most definitely.
I mean, I think 20 years ago, our parents or grandparents didn't even have the options available. Today we can have a discussion about these.
Which is exciting to think about.
We're going to either continue to grow and innovation takes place and more can bring more Sharia-compliant products to the market. But in saying that, I do think we have a responsibility, and part of this podcast is to do that, is to actually get the word out. Because just think about it, we've got the jargon that Ali spoken about earlier, this banking jargon, normal, conventional. Then you layer it with Islamic terminology as well. You got this double. Now you confuse people. I mean, you're talking about the interest rates, the markets, and you throw mutalaba, diminishing musharaka on the. What is that? You know,
what are you talking about?
We've had discussions with ulama and with people and experts, and we say that if we maybe renamed it ethical finance instead of Islamic finance, more people would have, you know, taken it up. Because I still think there's a lot of non-Muslims learn about Islam from TV, from movies, and there's the stigma that terrorism, all of those type of things. So when they talk about Islamic banking or Islamic finance, they start to question, where's the money going to, where's the money coming from, are they financing terror, all of those type of things. But if you really break it down and you understand Islamic finance, and you understand the ethical part of it, not getting involved in gambling, in casinos, in alcohol, in those type of industries that actually impact the communities negatively, a lot of people take it up.
Brings about social justice.
Exactly. I know non-Muslims have taken up Islamic products because they don't believe in gambling.
Or alcohol.
Or
tobacco
or the
industry.
Tobacco or the pornographic industry. They want to stay away from that. So ethically they want to bank or deal with their finance from an ethical aspect. And Islamic finance offers that. So we should maybe look at renaming it ethical finance.
What I think is interesting, and there's another podcast that was like, if the, and I'll be bold and say this because I believe it, if the product if the investment is Sharia compliant, you can count it as ESG.
Correct.
It will meet the principles.
Ethical.
It will be ethical, social governance, and what's the other one?
Environmental, social governance.
Yeah, it
yeah.
meets all the standards.
No, absolutely, and I agree with you.
Not necessarily the other way around.
I agree with you 100%, and this is actually a conversation that we had on one of our previous podcasts, specifically talking around environmental, social, and governance aspect, and how it relates to Sharia investing. What I can say though, whether we rename it ethical finance or Islamic finance, always for me, from my perspective, is that I'm extremely proud to say that Islam has its own financial system.
Yeah.
And for me, that is an amazing part of our deen.
Yeah.
That Islam is so complete that these
Even covers your economics.
it covers every
teaches you how to clean yourself, and teaches you how to deal with your finances, teaches you how to play. I mean,
How to
it's
deal
really
with
a
your
way of life.
spouse. All of that.
How to treat your spouse.
Alhamdulillah. So, just getting back to some of the
Yeah, off topic.
no, absolutely. But just getting back to some of the questions around the products, because we really want to get this out to our community. Where do you see the biggest lack in the product set in holistic financial planning from a Sharia perspective? Or do you think at the moment that even though we may not have that many options, we can actually provide holistic advice?
I think there's, and this is in my journey in terms of looking for ways to service the community more, because why is it that on the conventional side they can have all those holistic solutions from 10 different companies, but we have one company only doing the thing? It makes no sense. And I mean, Islamic finance is not just for Muslims, it's for anyone. And, so I think we are lacking very much on independent life cover. I don't like calling it life cover. Life takaful. But we say life cover so that people can automatically understand what it
And
does.
relate.
But it's family takaful. When you die, so at the point of your death, then the money pays out to cover you for specific reasons. Your bond, your debt, your taxes, legal expenses, etc. We're lacking in an independent one, meaning it's a standalone. It's not an addition to a product. It is just a standalone there. I promise you, we must have something like that. Muslims are not going to be the only one taking it up, just because of the makeup of it. And then also, like a funeral, I think, a funeral cover that integrates with some of the tukamanis and the people who wash the body. I think not everybody knows the terms. So people who wash the body, to the imam doing the service, to the one digging in the hole. We don't have an integrated system like that. I think there's been attempts, but nothing as yet that's prominent in the market yet. And
I think the challenge with funeral cover or funeral Sharia compliant cover is that, as Muslims, if you pass away, we be as soon as we can, almost likely the same day. Or if anything,
there's a time
the next
factor.
day. There's a time factor. So with funeral cover, it takes a couple of days for that policy to pay out. So I think that's maybe the challenge there. But it sounds like, I would have loved to explore some of the products like the family cover and maybe break it down, some of the other products. But
We'll have you back.
Another
but
podcast.
we're going to have to have you back. We've been saying that after every podcast about becoming a bad habit. But, it's a very important topic and it's very interesting. And like you said, we could go on for another hour or two speaking about it. But, we have run out of time. Is there any last thing that you'd like to share with the community before we end off, inshallah?
I would say education, number one. When it comes to this, the thing that's going to drive change in this entire industry, whether you are a professional working as a banker or an accountant, financial advisor, and the end user, the consumer, the client, education is the thing that's going to drive the change in this industry, to get more people on board to building product, and for the financial advisors to give proper financial planning, because I know we didn't talk about it, but zakah is a cornerstone of our Islamic financial planning. And then also for the client to understand exactly what they have without arguing with the financial advisor. The client must already the community must just know what it is. That's my That's what I want for them. You know? Without me coming to convince them, without product being on the table, they just understand the economics of Islam.
Alhamdulillah, very well said. Shukran Ihsan for your time. And if you enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. And keep watching. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.